Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Uh, as you may know, this is the fourth and final installment of our four-part series, and this is going to be a pretty hot topic on agent-level reporting. So in case you've missed any of our previous sessions, we will be repeating all four installments two more times with sessions throughout August and September every Friday. We'll repeat each series. Um, just a note on that, we do have the recordings available on our YouTube channel. Brittany's going to show you that in just a little bit, how to get there and review those recordings, but just want you to know that those are out there from the previous three sessions. We'll be adding this one probably early next week to our YouTube channel as well. My name is Rebecca Kuhn. I am a business analyst with Workflow Concepts, and we're going to be your host today along with Cisco. A little bit about us, Workflow Concepts. We're a team of call center professionals with experience in designing, staffing, managing, and operating call centers for over 20 years. And so we work with customers to help enhance their UCCX investment and to improve the customer journey and maximize that utilization of UCCX. We're a pretty unique team that knows what it's like to be in the trenches of the contact center world, and so we would like to share some of our expertise with you today in hopes that it'll help you too. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Brittany Erskine, who is also a business analyst with Workflow Concepts, and she's going to be our presenter for today's session, and so I'm going to hand it over to her. Brittany?
All right. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Two things before we get started. I just want to make note, if it wasn't mentioned already, that you are muted currently. We do ask that you remain on mute. And throughout the presentation, if you do have questions, you can send those questions to the moderator. That would be Rebecca. There is a specific time allotted for questions at the end where we'll go through them together and we'll talk through them out loud. Any questions after the session ends, you can always send them to info@workflowconcepts. Okay, so as Rebecca mentioned, this week we are going to be talking about agent reporting and the specific reports behind what feeds our agent-based data. And being that it's the last, it's true to its form here. We've kind of trickled down throughout the session in the series. We started with architecture, going through CUIC details. We've gone through CSQ report details. And now at that bottom rung here, we're really looking at the agent at the individual level. So it's only fitting that it is our last. As we recap and go back to week one, I want to just mention that in the recap here. Week one, we talked about architecture being the architecture of CUIC, right? Cisco Unified Intelligence Center. The whole point of this series is to get more familiar with that application and how to use those reports. CUIC is driven by the UCCX architecture. UCCX being the communications platform that allows for the distribution of CSQs or ACD calls to skilled resources. We mentioned that there are different levels of reporting based on this architecture, those being system-level reports versus application, to CSQ level reports, and now finally, and not least at all, is agent-based reports. Specific fields have different definitions and understanding of the data that we see, and that's really defined by your specific scripting. We talked a little bit about that in week one. Scripting, what we mean by that is a Cisco coding language that allows for inbound calls to route to our agents. So again, that being very specific to your environment. Week two, we went through a deep dive of navigating the different options available to us in CUIC. We discussed dashboards, which permissions and rights are required to view and required to create them. We talked through where to find the necessary reports, right, in all of the different folders that we have there in the interface. We walked through where to find the reports mentioned in week one, the reports that we went over in last week, the reports that we're going over this week. So if you did miss that, as Rebecca mentioned, we will be going through where to find those reports later in the session. The other thing we talked about, of course, is how to edit or create new based on stock reports. So those are customizing stock reports that are already available in the system. So instructions on how to do that are available in that second session. For week 3, last week, right, we focused on going through some of the more commonly used CSQ-based reports. We discussed the difference between detail level reports and summary level reports, which again we will be doing today. Because at the agent level, we also have detail level and summary level, and both give us a different story. So we, in week 3, discussed the difference between those reports. We talked about the contact service contact service activity by CSQ. We talked about an interval report. We talked about the CCDR report, the detail level report. So there's a lot of really good, useful reporting information as it pertains to CSQs in that session. So if you are on here, you're looking for CSQ help, you're looking to see, how many presented versus handled, you're looking for those key KPIs per CSQ or skill, that's available in week 3. So really to sum up, again, week 4, we've mentioned it several times. We'll just kind of dive right into it here. Week 4, we're going to talk about the key KPIs that are important to supervisors and managers alike, maybe at the team lead level if that's how your environment is structured. But really, we're going to be focused on the agent and team level of that report. And as it pertains to the resources that you have and that you leverage, right, your teams, the members of your team. So again, we'll be talking about the summary level and the detail level of that as well. So with that being said, we are going to go through and talk through some of the reports, right? Just like last week, I have captured here a quick screenshot of the CUIC view of the agent-based reports. I have starred out here some of the ones that I will be talking about today. Not to say here that if it's not starred, it's not important. Most of these reports have specific definitions. They're written for specific reasons. So if you find one here that is not starred, you have questions on, you can go ahead and send that over, and we'll talk about it. But one of the reasons I wanted to start and talk about these specific reports here that we'll be going through, the reason I picked them is because these are, first and foremost, these are ones that I use most often. They are ones that help me find the key pieces of information that I need to kind of get started, whether it's I need to see this at a CSQ, or I'm sorry, at a summary level, a high level, how is everyone doing? Or do I need to look at it in the closer detail? Is there an anomaly in the data, or am I looking for a data that has information that I need to put then into some sort of a pivot chart to feed, an outside source of data that I'm looking for? So I'm going to talk about a few different ones there. So one of the most important ones, I think, especially going back to week 2, right, where we walked through how to edit stock reports. One thing that Cisco did as they kind of, increased our abilities to do that more efficiently, they've also provided us 2 really key reports in order to help us with that. One is the CSQ All Fields report. The other one here that I have, the first one, is the Agent All Fields report. So in the Agents All Field report, it presents a historical view of all of the activity of the selected agents. And this is going to show summary details. It's not going to show a record by record. This is a summary-based report. And basically what this report does in a nutshell, as you can see here, it has many, 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 many different fields. And the screenshot that you see in front of you here does not even contain all of the different data elements that this report holds. Really, so the purpose of this report at its foundation is not to say, oh, wow, this is a great report, let me just look at this data, because it's kind of hard to read when we have all of this information. I mean, if I go through and I look at calls presented, calls handled, I can't even read all of the titles. I mean, you could, of course, you click and drag and you can kind of open it up a little bit to see that data. But really, what this is good for is paring it down. Because if I want to talk about this in more detail is if you all are joining from session 2, in session 3, you'll recall we've talked about customizing stock reports. And one of the things you can't do necessarily is combine to report. It's really based off editing a stock report. So if we look at, the next report that we'll be looking at, and we have a set number of fields available to us, if we go and we edit that report, we're only going to be able to edit, add, and remove the fields that are inherently available in that specific report definition. What sets this report apart from the others is that it has all of the agent fields, hence the name of the report, Agent All Fields Report. So that's why this report is really, it's critical. It's been critical in my application of this technology. So I definitely wanted to start off with this and kind of give you that high-level view. This is a great report if you are looking to edit and pare down, maybe create a new agent view. And as I did mention, there is a CSQ All Fields report as well. So again, this is from the agent perspective. It's going to give me data available from the agent. The next report that we're going to be talking about, I think, is it's one of my favorites, and I get a lot of questions on it, which is why I chose to put it in today's presentation, because it has a lot of acronyms. We all know that there are a lot of different acronyms in the Cisco world, and really any world, right? It's what do these acronyms mean? And I think that's why this is an underutilized report. But really what this report does, its function is to show and present a summary of each call that's dialed and received by an agent. When I say each call dialed and received, what that translates to is not only at the ACD level, but the non-ACD level, and not only on the IPCC level, but the non-IPCC level. And I would be very remiss in my job today if I did not explain a little bit about what those acronyms mean. So we'll break it down here. Inbound versus inbound ACD versus inbound non-ACD. What these two different sections, I guess, in the report mean is ACD is going to be an automatically distributed call, right? This is a queue call coming in to my agent. A non-ACD call, right? In its essence, whether it's IPCC or not, a non-ACD call is a number that is not coming through and being distributed by an IVR or a menu. An example would be if somebody dials an agent's IPCC extension directly and receives a call on that extension, whether it's from the outside if they can or the inside, wherever, they're receiving an inbound call that is not automatically distributed, which means it did not come through a queue, a CSQ. Okay, so that's really the first difference. The second difference, right, is IPCC versus non-IPCC. Okay, extension IPCC is defined as the last active UCCX extension that Unified Communications Manager is assigned, the last one assigned to that agent. And what that means in a nutshell is that is the extension that the agent logs into Cisco Finesse or, back in the day, Cisco CAD. That is their agent extension versus the non-IPCC, which is defined as the last active non-UCCX extension that Unified Communications Manager assigned to the agent. So that example would be, if I am an agent, I am sitting here and I have two extensions listed on my phone. My top one here that I'm looking at is my UCCX agent extension. That's IPCC. That's what I log into Cisco with, Cisco Finesse. My non-IPCC extension is it's the line that I have outside. So if you dial our 1-800 number and you dial my 4-digit extension, that's going to come to my non-IPCC extension versus if I call into the 1-800 number and I dial 1 for sales and it eventually gets routed to me, it's going to go to my top IPCC extension. So understanding those differences, and by the way, those definitions are available on this report, which is, where I found the information initially. And of course, if I have a good team that helps me understand these things, because I do the reports. I am not a scripter, right? I'm not a technical resource here. I just do the reporting. So the understanding of these different acronyms and what they mean and how they relate to your environment is going to be critical to understanding this report, which is why I think it's an underutilized report, because it gives a really good picture of the agent and what their daily activity levels are like. Because in some of the other reports, right, in a CSQ report or some of the other agent reports, we get a really good understanding of what the ACD activity is. And when I say that, I mean, the queue information coming in, because that's ultimately what we're looking to report on. But we also have, and I've had several questions as we've gone through this, well, what about outbound? What about outbound calls, right? How do I know how many outbound calls they made? And there is a folder in CUIC for outbound specifically. However, it doesn't give us that information because that's really meant for outbound campaigns by the system. So this is the perfect report if you're looking for outbound information as well as inbound. And as you can see here, it also gives you transfer in and transfer out as well as conference. So that's a huge, huge question that I get a lot of the times is, it's Brittany, where do I find this information? I've been through everything. Do I have to go through a detail level report in order to figure this out? And the answer is no, you don't. You have a report that is the agent call summary report. And if you do not know or you're not familiar with this report and you have had that question in the past, definitely find this report and get used to it, because it's a really great understanding of not only how many calls are coming into the agent from the CSQ, how are they handling those calls, but how long are they taking on outbound calls, right? And is it outbound on IPCC, right? And a lot of the times that's a recorded line, depending on people's environments, right? Let's do a little bit more reporting on that. And then what about on the non-IPCC line, right? So how many times am I dialing out from my desk phone, right? And dialing out or dialing over to a colleague versus, again, how many calls were transferred in and how many were transferred out. It is labeled as ACD. So this is only monitoring transfers in and transfers out in regards to a CSQ call. Okay. Another thing about this, and the last one as well, is that the filter criteria here, and most that we're going to see today, are you can sort by the agent name, the skill name, and the CSQ name, which is I think it's a critical view, because for me, I may not necessarily want every agent in there, or I may not want to sort through all of my agents to get, the top 5. If they're in a team, I can search just by the team itself, which I think is helpful a lot of the time. Okay. The next 2 reports pertain to a little bit of adherence. And what I mean by that is what are the agents doing throughout the day, not just maybe at the phone call level, but how does this pertain to their state? There's a couple different versions of this report here that I've chosen to bring up. One is by agent, one is by interval. I chose to put the interval report in here because it allows for tracking of state by 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or of course the entire report range. And this is, I think, critical too if I wanted to look at one agent specifically, or if I wanted to look at the whole team, and I really wanted to see what the percentage of not ready time was at 8 o'clock in the morning versus 10 o'clock in the morning. And what this can be helpful for really is to show me, if in my CS, and an example of how I would use this report is if I see specifically in my CSQ interval report that I have some pretty awful or some opportunities for improvement numbers around a specific time frame, what my next step logically is going to be is, well, let me look at my agents. How many people did I have logged in at that time? And of the people that I have logged in, what are they doing with that time? Just because you have somebody logged in does not necessarily mean that they are ready and or that they're ready or in the talking state. You have a lot of people that can be in the not ready state as well. And when you do have a high indices of not ready time, a lot of the times that can be an indicator of maybe some coaching that needs to happen at the agent level, or maybe they were assigned a task during a busier time of the day, and maybe that as supervisors and managers we need to look and say, you know what, I gave Ashley a task at 8 a.m. and maybe I should have saved that for 1 p.m. after the lunch rush. So it's not as sophisticated a tool as I think like WFM or one of the really true workforce management tools, but it's a great way to look at what people are doing and what percentage of their time are they spending in each of these states. And it breaks it down, of course, not ready time, reserved, which is defined as the time between a phone call being presented to the agent and when they answer the call, right? We've all seen them go from the ready state to reserved to talking, hopefully, right, if they've answered the call. How much time are they spending talking, and then how much time are they spending in work time, right? Work time being that automatic wrap-up time after a call. So it keeps track of all of that data for you in the percentages. The other thing I like to point out here is that I do have a very granular level view, right? As I'm looking at one agent, I'm looking at her throughout the entire day, and I'm seeing it at the hour interval. You see a lot of zeros because I've chosen to pull it from midnight. Okay, well, you see zeros because she wasn't logged in at midnight. There is no data. However, it will still show that record. So if this is something that you're pulling your entire team at the interval level, I would suggest paring down your time frame with this, especially with a larger view if you're looking at a lot of agents at once. The other thing to point out with this is you can look at it at the team level. You can look at it by day, and you can look at that entire report range. When I say entire report range, I mean you can look at the interval start and end time from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And throughout the entire day, you can report on, let's say, yesterday. Okay, yesterday. Let's see how much the overall not ready percentage time was for my team for the day. So it can be a very granular level report, or it can also be a high-level summary, quick view report. So that's why I like to include this one, because it has a lot of there's a lot of functionality built into it, and it can be used in many different situations. Okay. Oh, there we go. Thought my computer froze there for a second. Mild attack of the heart. Okay. The next report you'll see, it looks a little similar, and at first glance, it kind of looks, right, it looks very similar, but it has a different purpose. So this agent summary report versus maybe the call summary report or the state summary report gives you a summary of the activities. So not necessarily not ready versus ready, but it includes things like handle time, which is something the other report doesn't, or handle ratio. Handle ratio that you see here is defined as calls that the agent handled divided by the calls that are routed to the agent, right? So ratio of calls routed versus actual calls handled. So of course, the closer to that 1.0 ratio we get, the better off we are. The other key piece of information I think here is the handle time, the overall handle time, right? Because we can look at it at a granular level. We can look at talk time, hold time, work time, and we can coach to those. But if we're looking at this at a quick glance and we want to see, okay, well, let me just see how the handle times are, right? And that's a really key KPI at the agent level, because it allows us as supervisors and managers to look at, well, how long is Ashley taking to handle a call versus Brittany or Jay, right? The people listed on this report. And this is usually a quick indicator of, well, how are they performing, right? And that's why I really like this, is because it's how are they performing. And let's talk through a specific situation, right? Let's talk through a higher than average handle time, right? Well, that calls my attention to the handle time, right? Because it's a little bit higher. Well, if I look at it, I look at average talk, I look at average hold and average work, and I'm like, okay, well, those all look pretty standard. But then I go and I look at somebody like Jay maybe, or myself, and I look at it and it's a lot lower. Well, first glance, that's great, right? The lower the handle time, the more calls I can handle overall as a call center. That's just basic math. But maybe there's a reason that that's a lot lower. And one indicator of that might be, right, we do have a work time, we do have a hold time. Maybe they're not using the work time appropriately, right? Maybe that work time is 0 and they're just trying to boost their numbers. And I go and I look and that's it, right? They're not doing their after call work. They're not taking the appropriate notes. They're not using the time we've given them after the end of a call, and that's affecting that overall handle time. Or, maybe they have, a higher hold time and their talk time is really low. Well, are they really servicing the customer at that point? Anomalies in the handle time and kind of seeing that max and the average can point you to some coaching opportunities that you might have with your staff, or on the other side, it might have, a good impact in a commendation, or, a pat on the back at the round table meeting in the morning. Whatever that might be, or whatever your use for looking at this is, this will give you the handle ratio, right? How successful are they at taking the calls that we've presented to them, and how are they performing with the calls that we've handed them? And again, you can look at this by the agent individually. You can look at it by the team. So this is really a great report for how are they performing with what we're giving them. The other thing I do like to point out is idle time. Idle time is not necessarily just they're sitting there with, their hands in their lap, not doing anything. Idle time is the average time that the agent spent in the not ready state. It does not, however, define what not ready state. So this could be lunch, this could be break, this could be special project, this could be I'm out of the office for a training. Whatever that not ready code is, we do have detail level reports that will give us that information if we do see kind of an anomaly here with a higher than average. But really, you can take into consideration, okay, how long should lunch take, right? How long should breaks take, and what the average of that is, and is there something outside of that I need to be aware of? But other than that, is there an anomaly here? Are they spending more time in idle than they should be? Or do I know, oh yeah, that number's higher because I assigned Ashley to a special project today for 2 hours and took her off the phones. So again, these are clear indicators that can kind of help with coaching. And ultimately, the better our stats here and the better these KPIs are, the better the CSQs perform overall. Okay, so those are really at high level our summary reports. Summary reports, again, I said a lot of things like anomalies and KPIs and averages, and those all really sum up what a summary report is. It gives you that quick glance view of how is this team performing, especially if you pull it at the team level and you're looking at everybody's averages versus one individual, and you can do both. But again, that's really gives you that quick view glance versus a detail level report, which we have a couple of different options here that I'm going to go over. The detail level allows you to get into a more granular detail level view And what I mean by that is this is a call by call record. It's going to give me all of the different calls that Brittany Erskine took today, right? And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing agent name, ID, start, end time, and that's start, end time of the individual call, right? It includes duration. And the thing that I love about this report here is that it does include the CSQ. I personally have used this report for a couple of different reasons because it gives us some really some critical pieces of information, I think. I had mentioned earlier on one of our summary, right, the call summary report, that we have the ability to look at, a little bit, right? We have a quick view of outbound. One of the things that you could look at and sort by and filter by in this report, right, in the filter parameters, is call type. And I've included a screenshot that calls that out right here. Your call types are, right, transfer in, transfer out. Was it a transfer in? Was it a transfer out? Was it an outbound on IPCC? And we talked about that, right? So am I using my agent line to call someone back versus outbound on non-IPCC, right? Am I using my DID, my individual line, to call someone back? And then you have inbound non-ACD. Somebody dialed my agent extension, dialed me directly. Inbound non-ACD, non-IPCC. Somebody dialed my DID directly. And then, of course, you have inbound ACD and conference. In this report, what I love about this report is it's going to give you kind of a story behind the call type. So if I sort by inbound ACD, you'll see here I actually have two examples right over here in the corner. Inbound ACD, comma, transfer. And it's cut off a little bit there, but it's transfer out. Okay, because I took an inbound ACD call and I transferred it somewhere else. And that's really great because it does allow you to look at this at the individual call level. And when I say that, I mean, you can see the call ANI, right? That's the number that called into the call center. So this is the number that called me. So if I am looking up, maybe it's a customer complaint. I've done this, right? Customer complains, oh, I was transferred to so-and-so, and then I was on hold for 10 minutes. We've all had those situations, right? We've all had those or been around environments where that exists. This is a good example of how I can pull up by agent, by phone number, by call type, and I can see the exact the story behind that phone call. So I can see it coming in through the ACD. I can see that it was a queued call. I can see that it was transferred out. I can see how long the call was on hold for. The other piece to this as well is that it does give you a good view on all the CSQs that it was routed to. Back in one of the first sessions, we talked about architecture. And for some people, they have a very simple call in, route to queue, answer to agent environment. There are other environments out there. Maybe it's a little bit more complex of an environment, or maybe it's a little bit busier. There's maybe a greater need for backup where you have nested queues. If you have a call that is queued, right, the call is actually placed in two different lines, right, three different queues in order to get to the first person as quick as possible. Maybe it's a priority caller. Maybe it's an emergency. Maybe it's maybe it's just that you have a great backup system and you have to, leverage different people in different groups, and the first person to be available takes that call. Whatever the case may be or why you have it set up that way, this report here at the agent level will give you an understanding of this call and the other CSQs that it was queued for. One of the questions that I've gotten on this is, okay, well, Brittany, it said other queues, but how do we know which one handled the call? And that would be defined by this guy right here, call routed CSQ. Technically, the call is routed to all of the CSQs listed, but it's handled by this field here, right? So this would be the column that handles the queue. So if you're looking in your queue statistics, you're going to see that this is a call presented and handled both in this queue. Okay. Also includes skills, talk, hold time, work time that are associated with that call. So again, uses for this, it's good. It's a great investigative report. I've used it to track call types coming in. I've also used it to look at the different queues that things were routed to. So it's a versatile report. It is very specific. I would not look to this to see any, this in most of the agent reports, right? It's not going to give us any abandoned time. It's not going to give us, the average handle time of each of these because it's a detail level report. It's going to truly give us a record by record view. Another report here, again, it's another detail level report. This is the agent state detail report. We have an agent state summary report that we talked about. This is going to give us the data at a detail level report. So each time I change my state in the system, whether it is something that is automated after I log in or my phone goes offline, maybe that's a state change. Anytime a state is changed for whatever reason, whether it's automatic or manual, all right, I click on the drop down and I change my state. What this is going to do is it's going to create a record. This report provides that list of records by and at the agent level, okay? One good thing I've used this for is calls not answered. I've gone through an agent throughout the day and said, you know what, that call is not answered. It's an RNA. That's why she was presented a call and didn't get it, because she didn't answer it. And as you can see, I am doing really well today, or a couple days ago, with all of my RNAs. I do want to point out, as I did last time, this is a lab system. All of my data comes from a lab system. So don't judge me too harshly. But what it does too is it gives me the duration of that. So whereas in the summary reports, it'll give me a not ready average or a not ready percentage. What's the percentage of my day that I spend in not ready? Here, if you do see an anomaly, maybe this is where you could go and look, right? Investigate. Okay, well, Brittany has a higher than average not ready time today. Why is that? Well, let me look at the state detail and see what time that was. Oh, I remember that. She had to take an emergency phone call, or she had to step away to, go to the doctor's office. Whatever it would be, you have that record here, and you can kind of break it down and say, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Or maybe this is a coaching opportunity where you had somebody that was on break for 2 hours. Maybe it's just that they forgot to move their state back to ready. That happens a lot. So this is something where you can go and look at it at the agent level. You can also look at this by the team level, okay? And if, for example, you wanted a quick view for the day of all of the calls not answered, okay, you run it, give me the team, right? Select the team. This is customer care. We're going to select customer care, and we're going to look at today. And then I go and I click on reason because I want to know all of the different instances of calls not answered, right? I want to see that. Or the break, right? How many breaks should you have? If it's 2, then it's the number of employees you have times 2. If there's a lot more there, it's a problem. But no, in seriousness, it's a great investigative report. It's also a good way to just kind of keep a good pulse on state changes. The last one here that I'm going to talk about today is the agent WrapUp data detail report. WrapUp codes are an amazing tool that if you are not using them, they are great. And for those, most of you are familiar with WrapUp codes. If not in the Cisco system, then maybe if you've used them in a previous system. WrapUp codes give the agent the opportunity to manually select a disposition of a call coming in. So at the end of a call or during a call in these more recent versions, you can select a drop-down that is a customized list of different dispositions that you would provide them based on the CSQ. And you would give them that drop-down. They select why that call happened, or maybe you wanted to track this was, this is a callback, this is a complaint, this is a sales call, this is green versus red. You can track that data. You could do it at the summary level, but you can also do it at the agent level, which I think is absolutely critical, because it is a manual effort at the agent level, meaning this is human based. I have to remember as the agent to physically select a button and select a drop down. We've used this agent-based data detail report in the past to make sure that the implementation of a new WrapUp code is being used effectively, or maybe it's a new resource that's come on board and you want to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to, that they're using those WrapUp codes for every single call. And alternatively, it's a great detailed record of each code, right? Because it is a WrapUp-based report. So if I'm looking at this and I'm looking at Brittany for the day, right? How many new order calls does she have versus new test, right? And this is by, of course, CSQ. I have CSQ here routed. So are these appropriate to the CSQ that was routed? The other piece that I think can be very, very helpful is it gives you the talk time, hold time, and work time associated with each of these WrapUp codes. So if you wanted to look at a specific code, you can filter on that, and you can say, okay, these are taking a little bit longer for Brittany, right, at the agent level. Maybe we can provide a little bit more coaching for calls that pertain to new order. So it gives you a really good view on what this agent is doing, how they're performing with which WrapUp code. So it gives you a really good view on not only the WrapUp code and information about those types of calls, but it can also be used to view it at the agent level. So it's a detailed record by record. And there's also, like I said, there's also a summary based on the WrapUp code itself, which is a really good tool. But I wanted to, again, this is about the agent. We wanted to look at how the agent is performing. What are they doing with their time? How are they doing it? Just to kind of wrap up everything we've talked about before we move on to the next slide, where we'll be talking about the sessions and themselves, is at the agent level and at the team level, you can look at people individually, you can look at the team individually versus, sales versus customer service. So you can look at all of those key KPIs. What are the average handle times, right? What's the talk times? How long are they spending on hold? What's the ratio? Are people answering the calls that they're being presented, or are we letting a lot of calls roll over, right? Typically, the caller doesn't know that they're rolling over, but ultimately that has a downstream effect because you had a ready resource and now you don't, right? So it stacks up. All of the all of the KPIs here point to mission critical pieces of information where it tells a story, not just on how your individuals are doing, on how the team is doing, and how the overall call center is doing, how the environment itself, as far as calls coming into your organization, are doing. So being that we did the agents last, I would say that your agent's performance is probably one of the most important. Your staffing level is probably the most important. If you have a super killer IVR, but your agents are just taking too long on the phone and you don't have visibility to that, you can put technology around anything, but looking at your agent information is absolutely critical because it's going to help you maximize the technology and the efficiency that you have. So with that being said, I think we've armed you today with a few really key reports that you can go back and use if you're not already. Hopefully I've been able to help shed light on some of those more complicated reports and the acronyms and reasons to use them, and maybe you're looking for an investigative tool, and hopefully I've been able to help with that. So again, any questions on anything we've talked about so far, please send them over to Rebecca. While I look for her to sort through those really, really quickly, one of the most common questions we get on these sessions so far is, where are the sessions? So you can find them at youtube.com/user/workflow concepts under our playlists. It is the most recent playlist there, and they're up and ready. So sessions, 1 through 3 are up right now. And as Rebecca said in the beginning of this, session 4 will be up early next week. And I'll leave that up for the moment while I pass this over to Rebecca, because we are going to be moving into Q&A. So if you do have questions, please make sure that you are sending them to Rebecca. She's going to moderate, and we'll be able to answer those the best we can.
Great. Thanks, Brittany. So we have a couple of questions here. I'll start with the first one. This is from Y, wanting to know, is there a report that will show multiple wrap-up codes that a single agent selects during a call, or does it display just the last selected wrap-up code?
That is a great question. Currently, the wrap-up code feature only allows you to select one wrap-up code, which when it translates to how we report on it, it will only report on the last saved disposition code. If you're talking about chat, I know if you have that up and running, does allow you to select more than one. That will be found in a chat-specific code report, alternatively to the one that we just talked about. That was exclusively for inbound phone calls, and it will save the last saved code that was selected, not all of the different ones that they may have selected throughout the call.
Great. Hopefully why that helped. Please feel free to chat back if it did not. Jim asked the question, can we download the PowerPoint? We don't currently have the PowerPoints up there, but let me follow up, see if there's a place where we can put this kind of collateral out there for everybody to get to. Right now, really the videos go over the PowerPoint completely, but we will certainly check into putting it out there. I know that I've emailed it out to a few users, but we can certainly look into making that available to all. And Eric wants to know if we can post the link to the YouTube in chat. I will absolutely do that, Eric, right now. In fact, let me grab that link and I'll put it out here. Just make sure that when you go in and you look at this, it's going to be the playlist link that I'm putting out there. And so you'll need to go into that playlist and go to the CUIC training series playlist, just like Brittany has on her screen. And I don't think I have any of the other questions. Brittany, does anybody else have any questions out there that they'd like to get in? We have a few more minutes of time. I don't see anything else coming in. So just to reiterate, if you have any additional questions for us, please go ahead and forward those to info@workflowconcepts.com. We are happy to answer any one-off questions or be more specific with some of our answers or guidance. Oh, Colleen said, will you have classes on scripting? And specifically SMS, it sounds like. We hadn't planned anything, but certainly a great recommendation or a great ask. So I can run that up the chain, Colleen, and see if there's any way we can do that. If you want to send in a note onto this info@workflowconcepts.com, Colleen, then I'll have your contact information so that we can get back to you if we decide to do something like that, for sure. scripting is a little bit difficult to put in a class. You can imagine everybody's got such a different need or requirement. It really can be so personalized to the company and the industry and all of that. So it might be a little tough, but if you have some specific needs, let's talk about those. And we can do that offline, Colleen, for sure. So with that, if nobody has anything else, hopefully you found this series helpful. We sure hope it has been to everybody, and we hope that you'll visit our YouTube channel. There's some additional information out there, some additional YouTube videos out there that we hope you'll also find interesting. But again, if you missed any of these and you want to attend them in person and have an opportunity to ask questions throughout the presentation, we will be repeating this 2 more times throughout the rest of this month and the month of September. So it'll basically be a repeat of these, but obviously we'll be live and be able to take questions live. So, and I appreciate the note in here from Y. Thank you, Y. We're glad that you found it informative. We really do appreciate that, and we want it to be informative for everybody for sure. That was the goal, so love that. And so with that, we will let everybody get back 9 minutes to their calendar. Hopefully you have a great Friday. Happy weekend, everybody, and thanks for joining again.